In 2004, Marvel announced a partnership with EA along with a two-part project known as Marvel Nemesis. One half of the project was a 6-issue comic book miniseries written by Greg Pak called Marvel Nemesis: The Imperfects. This comic book miniseries was supposed to serve as a prequel to the second half of this project, a video game that would end up releasing on PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Nintendo DS, and PSP called Marvel Nemesis: Rise of the Imperfects. However, the video game itself ignores the comic book entirely and retells its own version of that story, which is why I'm not even going to bother discussing the comic book series throughout this video. Before we dive into Rise of the Imperfects, don't forget to hit that like button, it genuinely helps the channel out. If you haven't heard of Marvel Nemesis: Rise of the Imperfects, it's a fighting game that was developed by Nihilistic Software and EA Canada. Nihilistic Software, who also developed Conan for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, went on to rebrand as Instigate Games and develop both Resistance: Burning Skies and Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified for the PlayStation Vita. Long live the Vita. Meanwhile, EA Canada went on to develop a multitude of games for the following sports: FIFA, NHL, and EA Sports UFC, along with one of their more notable games, Star Wars Battlefront 2, under the rebranded name EA Vancouver. Simply put, Rise of the Imperfects is genuinely one of the worst Marvel games I've ever played, and I say that as someone who had fond memories of this game. There's a multitude of problems, such as random spikes of difficulty, terrible frame rates, a little to non-existent story, the lack of any camera lock, zero combinations, garbage movesets, awful reimaginings of Marvel characters, and on top of all of this, characters that you've never heard of. No, really, this game is filled with a bunch of villains that make you think, who the hell are you? If you thought that when you played this game back in 2005, it's not your fault. Despite this game not expecting you to know any of these characters since they were made specifically for this game's storyline, they treat these villains like they're big, mysterious villains with this overarching story, and truthfully, they're not. They're just a bunch of irrelevant, non-interesting characters that are ridiculously difficult to fight because every single time you have a boss fight with these characters, you're outmatched. You're not just fighting against a character that has better abilities than the character you're forced to play as. That's a problem all on its own. You're also going against all of the other problems that I previously mentioned as well. You'd think that this fighting game being Marvel themed would save it, or at least carry it enough to help you enjoy the game, but truthfully it doesn't. Collectively, it comes together to create one massively obnoxious experience that basically fails to do anything positive. The biggest problem I have with Rise of the Imperfects is the camera. As much as I hated Aquaman Battle for Atlantis, at least the camera was somewhat usable or semi-controllable, unlike this game. Every time you're fighting an enemy, whether it's a pointless, unimportant alien character that is blander than Marvel's Avengers aimbots, oh hey, I said something nice about Marvel's Avengers, who'd have thought? Or fighting terribly written original characters, the camera constantly has a mind of its own. It's always moving from one direction to another, and it's to the point where it kind of feels like whiplash. It's so bad that I almost consider putting a disclaimer about the gameplay footage possibly giving some level of motion sickness because it's that bad. You might be wondering, what about the C-Stick on the GameCube controller? Does it do anything? While yes, the C-Stick does fix the camera somewhat, it only helps when you're not moving around or barely have enemies near you. Truthfully, those moments are so far few between that you barely get to enjoy the simple fact that the C-Stick's function even exists. With how problematic the camera is, it plays a key role in my absolute hatred for these mini spaceship looking enemies. The lack of any target locking function or any real control of the camera allows these enemies to be the most overpowered enemies in the game. You think you can jump and hit them, but they instantly move away. You think you can catch up to them while they're low on the ground, and you get shot at enough times to be stun locked. There's no winning against these enemies besides hoping they shoot at each other and make themselves explode, which, to be fair, happened less than a handful of times during my playthrough. I understand that this game was released in 2005, but even Power Rangers Dino Thunder had a competent camera, and that game came out in 2004. The story of Rise of the Imperfects is laughably generic. New York once again is taken over by aliens and random villains that no one's ever heard of. Side note, it pains me as a New Yorker to see that even 17 years later, this is still a common storyline within movies, shows, or video games. Why is it always gotta be New York, man? The way you advance through the story is by choosing to play as specific characters that the game forces you to play as, and honestly, the characters that were chosen to advance this story just feel sporadic. You jump from playing as the Thing for a single level to playing as Wolverine, to playing as Elektra, to playing as Daredevil, to playing as Storm, to playing as Venom, and the list goes on. However, the game also tries to get the player to feel bad for the villains by making us play as these villains and introducing them via the ugliest and most oddly designed cutscenes I've possibly ever watched in a video game. There is no reason for this game to have visuals that look like this. The game wants to commit to this overly dark and gritty tone throughout every aspect of its design, and because of this overcommitment, it brings down the overall product value. Whether it's the main menu, the character designs, the level designs, the story, or the music, none of it feels like any of it should have been associated with Marvel. If anything, it almost feels like a precursor to the eventual tone of the future DCEU movies that we all know I love and enjoy. You can't blame me for feeling like that when this generic run-of-the-mill antagonist Niles Van Rokel is suddenly revealed and he comes off as some wannabe Lex Luthor. The funniest part is that when I first saw this cutscene during my playthrough, I was like, wait, is that Lex? Then I immediately had this moment of realization where I was like, nope, wrong universe, my bad. Despite Rise of the Imperfects being a fighting game, it lacks the number one thing you'd want in a fighting game: movesets and combos. Instead of feeling like a fighting game, it honestly just feels like a button masher because that's all you do, button mash. There are no real combos, there are no interesting movesets, and there's no real reason for you to try and figure out how to magically put combos together. The game itself only tells you how to do the following things: how to move, grab, attack, jump, dodge, break from an enemy trying to grab you, and how to run on walls, which is mostly used for Avengers Mansion. There is no in-game menu to teach you how to do specific movesets, as you'd see in other modern fighting games such as Street Fighter V, Mortal Kombat 11, or Injustice 2. Now you might be wondering why I'd even spend time ranting about this besides the fact that this game should have had an in-game combo list since it technically is a fighting game. Let me put it kindly, you don't know pain until you're constantly comboed by Storm over and over and over and over and over and over again. So, did I get my point across? It took the video game gods to come down and bless me with this random bug to end my pain. The most ridiculous thing about this is the fact that this game's AI feels way smarter than you could ever possibly be as a regular player. Time and time again, you're put against characters that somehow manage to out-combo you in a game that doesn't have any combos. Storm stunlocked me by continuously hitting me with lightning and throwing things at me before I could even react. And no, I'm not playing this game with a wireless GameCube controller. I'm using a wired one, so there shouldn't even be that much of a delay, if any delay at all. Throughout the entirety of this game, it just felt like the odds were stacked against my favor. There was a series of missions that I had to replay over and over again because this game was just poorly done. The missions are ridiculously bland, but some of them feel like they're purposely designed to be hard. Whether it's trying to fight a ridiculous amount of enemies as Daredevil on the roofs of New York City, or trying to play as Venom in arguably the worst area of the game because the frame rate's dropping to an all-time low, playing this game in 2021 is like trying to walk toward a really strong wind that's continuously pushing you back. Even the AI in this game feels like you're fighting gods because they're programmed to be obnoxious and make you feel like there's some missing combo list that's hidden in the game. Every character feels so much worse than they're probably designed to be, considering the AI seems to understand how to use the character way more than you do. Remember those villains that were created specifically for this game's story? Guess what? They're not fun to play as whatsoever, and the game trying to shove their backstories down your throat makes you not want to care about them at all. The game sucks now, and it sucked then too. In fact, I'd argue that this game earned its 54 Metacritic score for its GameCube port. You know, now that I think about it, it almost feels like by making this video, I'm kind of bringing back bad memories for some people. Now you might be wondering if there are any redeeming factors in Rise of the Imperfects, and there's only one fitting answer to that curiosity. Sort of. In the game, the more you complete the story, the more you unlock a series of comics that tell the story of 2 full comics. Don't get me wrong, this is a cool feature that I wish more modern comic book games did for people who don't actively read comics. With how far game development has gone, you can imagine how amazing it'd be to see a full comic unfold in front of your eyes as you sit back and watch. However, in Rise of the Imperfects, there's no way to control the speed of the comic. It plays at its own speed and expects you to keep up. This is what poor accessibility was like in 2005. Plus, when you click on a comic to watch, there's also a random narrator who jumps in and out of the story. Sometimes he says 2 to 3 sentences, and other times he says maybe 1 sentence as you read the comic. It's fairly annoying considering the narrator isn't even reading the comic itself. He's just giving extra backstory to the comic being presented to you. On top of that, the comics are genuinely blurry at times, and it ruins the art that is seemingly well done. If I compare the execution of this concept to Aquaman Battle for Atlantis, shockingly, I might have to give the edge to Aquaman Battle for Atlantis. BFA doesn't expect you to read at its speed when it's doing the same thing during its cutscenes, and there's no obnoxious narrator that sounds completely uninterested in the story he's narrating. Sure, the generic background music in BFA isn't all that, but it's hard to dislike it as much as Rise of the Imperfects execution. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, and in the case of this game, they had a good idea, but poorly executed this concept, which led to my sort of answer when it comes to the question, does Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects do anything positive whatsoever? For once, it pains me to roast a video game because if I'm being honest, I had fond memories of this game. I legitimately liked the PSP version of this game. I remember putting so many hours into this game and having a blast fighting the computer in what felt like large, open space mini battle arenas for maps. Unfortunately, it's hard to view this game in the same light anymore because it's really bad. The combat is bare bones, the story is non-existent, the Marvel characters just feel like they happen to be there thanks to the developers paying for this deal back in the day. Some of the missions are ridiculously hard or obnoxious for no reason whatsoever, and it's hard to like any themes within this game. The overly edgy or gritty theme doesn't work, the villains are ridiculously uninspiring, and the game commits the one specific crime that I hate in movies, shows, and video games. The lazy decision of choosing to use "this person had a traumatic past," which led to them becoming a villain cliche to build their villains. It's fairly easy to see why this game bombed review-wise and why Marvel and EA's partnership came to a rapid ending, thankfully. In the official I Don't Beat Games tier list of terrible retro games, Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects might be worse than Aquaman Battle for Atlantis. Not that that's saying much. I was able to complete BFA and BFA had Nessie in it, so I think it's fair to give this hard-earned win. Congratulations, Aquaman Battle for Atlantis. You're at the bottom of the barrel, but you're not at the absolute bottom. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that sub button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, write a comment down below. Don't forget to keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.